Everybody out there. Hello, hello. There's some noises out there. Getting ready to start up in a little bit. Obviously the cable's bent. This is Doug Fowler from Pulaski Talks. I hope everybody's out there feeling good tonight. We'll switch the scene over to the audience right now. We're kind of early. Trying to fill in here. A little early, got 5 minutes till the show starts. What you hear is the background noise, but like I said earlier, we're limited in our sound, so I've got microphones spaced everywhere. Best I can pick up. The cameras are picking up sound as well. And notice there we got a couple microphones on the table there for the speakers. The audience has got their mic, and hopefully our microphones on the cameras and everything else will pick up. They're intended to. I have to stage my iPhone camera. I'm going to try something out. Be patient. We'll be right back. just came up and said he's getting riled up and should be starting here shortly.
Okay, if you guys are good in your seats, we'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Prosecutor, Mr. Sheriff, you guys want to come up here. Just before we begin, just a couple admin notes. Thank you guys for being here, coming out tonight. We've got water and coffee and donuts over there to your left. And just kind of make yourself at home. We'll have a chance for everybody to kind of talk, give an update, and then we'll get some questions from the audience about what's going on in the county. Before we start, I think the right way to begin is by honoring God with a prayer. Pastor Howard Malone.
All right. That's a little bit loud. I'm glad I did that before one of you did it. Come up here talking. Okay, well, I'm the pastor here, and this is our house, so I'm going to pray a real prayer, okay? So bear with me. Father, thank you so much for loving us like you do. We just thank you for this opportunity to honor our law enforcement people and our organizations that keep us safe, that stay in harm's way for us. And Lord, I just ask you to give them wisdom, our sheriff, our police chiefs, all of our officers, all of their staffs, Lord. It's a tough job and many times thankless. And so I just ask you to strengthen them, give them peace to their families, Lord. Because we know every day they walk out that door, it could be their last, and that's very stressful. And so, Lord, we just ask you to visit your peace upon each officer, and especially their wives and their children, or husbands, for those females that are serving. Lord, just bless them. And God, you said if we lack wisdom to ask you, then you would give it to us freely. So, Lord, I'm just asking for wisdom tonight to all of these leaders, that they would make right decisions, correct decisions, and sometimes they're very hard decisions, but that you would just help them and assist them in that. And we just thank you always and give you honor for all you do for us in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just go ahead and take your seats wherever you can. I think I might sit down too so the mics up here can hear me. So if you don't know me, I'm Bill Hardwick. I'm a state representative and you're in my district, Waynesville, St. Robert, Fort Leonard Wood, Dixon. And what I do is I'm a lawmaker. We try to make the laws and we try to figure out, what the law ought to be in our state. And I think it's important that you're here tonight because if you never had a chance to talk to me or you have never met our county prosecutor, Jeff Thomas, or our county sheriff, Stacey Ball, it's a chance for you guys to have a dialogue and say, well, what are we doing about this in this county? What are we doing about this problem? What are we doing about the drug problem? What are we doing about public safety? What are we doing about break-ins? What laws do we change at the state level? Some things we can fix at the county level, some things at the state level. But we as elected officials, we don't know how to do our jobs effectively unless you guys give us feedback and say, here's what you need from us as elected officials, as your public servants. And I think all of us have a job and duty to make sure that the community's safe, that people are being protected, that violent crimes against individuals, citizens, unacceptable. And that's these guys' job, is to protect you from violent crime and make sure bad guys get off the streets. It's also all of our job to make sure that your constitutional rights as citizens is protected and that your liberties are protected and that the government's following those rules too. So that's what we hope to talk about tonight. Just some stuff at the state capitol. It's been going on the last couple of weeks. The House, we passed a huge crime bill omnibus that had a lot of changes in it. It was St. Louis Police Control, but there's a series of stuff in there too. And I'll note that we have families here tonight who have their loved ones that overdosed from fentanyl or were killed by fentanyl. And part of that bill is the governor's initiative makes distributing fentanyl where somebody dies, it makes it murder. And it makes it where there's fentanyl involved with children automatically and endangering the welfare of a child. So we're doing stuff definitely to crack down on fentanyl and fentanyl poisoning. I think there's a larger problem too of drug addiction and people in our community in Pulaski County. And I was meeting with the CASA folks earlier today, who's the appointed special advocates. And they were telling me about families that get tore apart. There's a lot of kids in foster care. And they were telling me that a lot of those problems start with addiction in the home. They're addicted to alcohol, they're addicted to drugs, they're addicted to something. And then their family gets tore apart. And there's all these residual effects from it. And just some of my thoughts on drug addiction, drug abuse. I don't think people who are struggling with addiction are necessarily bad people. I think a lot of times trauma leads to addiction, right? And they're kind of stuck in a trap. But I think it's our job at the state, and hopefully with dialogue from you guys, input what we can do, and our job to help those people get set free from that trap and get their families back together, life on track. That's what we want to have happen. So I hope we have that discussion tonight too. I think that, we talk a lot in the State House, we've got a lot of bills about, well, how long should somebody go to prison when they should be let out of prison? Well, we had a bill that we just debated earlier this week about whether or not the sheriff's department can fly drones over your property, right? That was part of the discussion. And there's a tool that you need to kind of track fugitives and criminals down. Then there's some privacy concerns too, right? So we always have that balance about public safety versus individual freedoms and rights. And that's kind of what we try to strike in the State House. But I also want to make it clear that I think, I don't want to speak for everybody up here, but all of us want you to be safe. All of us want the police officers to be supported and have the tools they need to do their job. But just being a police officer is dangerous in itself, pulling somebody over. You don't know what you're going to walk up to. When you go into a house and there's a call, you don't know what you're going into in that house. And there's some awful dangerous situations. And also make sure that the police officers are well trained and they know that they're working for the people, that they're working for the community. So I thought it was a good thing for us to kind of have that discussion tonight. And you can hear directly from our county sheriff. He can tell you what's going on. And you guys can ask whatever questions. You can hear from our county prosecutor who decides, to file charges, what charges get filed, and represent our state in court. So these are some general thoughts. I know we'll have more to talk about. I'll let you hear from, I think the order that we talked about was me and then the county sheriff and the prosecutor. They said, well, I make the laws, and then Stacey arrests them, and then Jeff charges them. So it just kind of goes in that order, makes sense. So without any further ado, our sheriff.
Good evening, everyone. As your county sheriff, I said many times, the county sheriff is the last person to defend your constitutional rights in the county. And I take that job very seriously. And I said before, I'm not going to make everyone happy as the sheriff with my decisions. But the decisions that I make will be for the betterment of Pulaski County. And that's the bottom line. Nothing to benefit me, nothing to benefit my agency. It's to benefit you and to keep you safe. I've talked a little bit online. We've talked a little bit about flock cameras, and that kind of went astray with Big Brother. I'm going to be checking everybody's license plates, and I'm going to be gathering information. Bottom line with the flock cameras, if you're not doing anything illegal, if you're not kidnapping somebody, if you're not stealing from people's property, you have nothing to worry about. Because we call it a hot list. And a hot list is what plates that we're looking for. Say we get an amber alert from Springfield. Or we had a silver alert today from Benton County. So if we get a silver alert or amber alert, we put that license plate in our flock camera system on a hot list. And if that vehicle passes by a camera in Pulaski County, it will alert us, and we can converge on that vehicle. That's all that camera is doing. It's alerting us for the bad people. Policing is by far nowhere near effective the way that we're continuing to, because we're not proactive. We're reactive. We're waiting for the call and then we're responding. The only way to get proactive in police force, in policing, is to take the steps to outwit our criminal element. Our criminal element they're not stupid. They know this county inside and out. They know the law inside out. They know what they can do. They know where to hide. They know where to go to hide from us. And if we're not taking the steps to enhance our sheriff's office and police departments to the point of where we're starting to get the upper hand on the criminal element, then we're just going to keep it's insanity. We're just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. And sometimes we get them, sometimes we're not. But having those advancements in law enforcement to help our community will by far make us more proactive and help keep you safe. Because that's the bottom line. That's why we're in law enforcement, is to keep you safe. Some other things, we're upgrading our vehicles, we're upgrading our weapons. My chief deputy worked long and hard on the vehicles and got us a great deal with ECU pursuits. And I'm getting 8 vehicles for the price that the county paid for 3. Just $10,000 more than what they paid for 3 trucks. So I'm outfitting 8 deputies with brand new vehicles, upgraded technology, in-car camera systems, or dash cams, integrated with their body cameras. So as soon as we walk in the sheriff's office, it downloads to the cloud, and we pull it down. So that's some technology, and the sheriff's office has those now, but these are integrated with the vehicles, so everything is talking to each other. Who's tried to get on our website within the past couple of days? All right. Well, if you noticed, our website's down. It's under construction. We are we're in negotiation now. We're going to upgrade to a new website, also a mobile app that you can download from either Apple or Google. And just to check and see what it's like, Phelps County has this app. You can download Phelps County app on your phone just to check it out. It is a major enhancement will be a major enhancement to our sheriff's office. It'll allow you to make reports right there on your phone, because everybody's got the phone in their hand. You don't always have a computer with the website. It talks to each other. I've been putting out our stats for monthly stats of what your deputies are doing. And I think this last month we were at 957 calls for service with 11 deputies, averaging about 86 calls per deputy. It's simple math. Some deputies are going to have more than others. It just depends on the night and the weekend they're working. But it'll give you near real-time data of what your deputies are doing on that app or on that website. It'll tell you there's a traffic stop at this location. It won't tell you any type of PII, any personal information. But it gives a little clean synopsis of what the deputies are doing. It'll tell you that we served a search warrant at this location. It'll tell you we had a disturbance at this location. Just a block. It won't tell you the exact address. All that stuff is filtered out to make it kind of generic. It'll let you know as that dispatcher is putting that information into the system, it feeds it out several minutes later because we don't want you going by our traffic stop in real time. So just things like that are going to enhance the sheriff's office, enhance your capability to talk to us, enhance your ability to get information from us without having to put everything on Facebook because I gather most of us have Facebook, but there's some people that don't, and which I applaud you for that. But there's just some things that, I mean, Facebook, it just doesn't, it doesn't hit. Luckily, we have 20-some thousand followers, so whatever message I put out on Facebook, it gets a pretty good response, which I'm thankful for because we're able to get the information out. But enhancing our capabilities as far as the website and the app and things like that, with the flock cameras, I mean, it's time to come into the times of the 21st century and start taking advantage of the systems that are out there to enhance our capability, as I said before, protect you. So I look forward to hearing from your questions. If you have any other questions, then, I'll be answering them.
Oh, hi. My name's Jeff Thomas. I'm the new prosecutor. I've had this job for exactly 3 months now and trying to change a few things in the office, but also trying to play catch up on a lot of old cases that are still floating around and get rid of some old things. So I've got some fresh eyes on all this stuff and talking about public safety, and I think what's a lot of people think, I'm always surprised. I've met with lots of victims who think once they interact with the sheriff's department or the police department, that criminal case is going to be done and they're not going to have to help my office prosecute that crime at some point and be a witness in that case and come to court and go through that. And a lot of the time that's hard for people to go and relive whatever trauma they went through that led them to be a victim of crime or a witness to crime even. But what we need in my office is all of the community's support when they do happen to be a witness or a victim of crime to come and help us. As far as other recommendations for public safety beyond what the sheriff can do in response to things and what Bill can do up at the legislature for us, I know some people up here were in my office just a few weeks ago talking about their neighborhood watch and knowing their neighbors, and we kind of live in a society now where you talk about Facebook and everybody that sits inside staring at their phones all day long nowadays. Get out and know your neighbors. Don't be afraid to text and call your neighbors and say, hey, there's a weird car that's been parked in front of your house for the last 6-7 hours. I just want to make sure you guys know who that is, or it looks like somebody's slumped over out there. Don't be afraid to call the police. Don't be, you're all a lot safer when you know your neighbors. Things I wouldn't think I would have to say until my own kid had his wallet stolen out of his car twice. Simple things like lock your doors don't seem to be common anymore. Teaching your kids to lock your doors doesn't seem to be a common thing.
Everybody anymore, but there are all things you still be talking about when it comes to public safety. Biggest other thing that I think drives me crazy about my job is domestic violence and help your friends know they're victims of domestic violence. Take a statistical average, somebody that goes back 6 or 7 times before they finally leave. They need help, they need resources we don't have in my office. Legislature is telling you to get paid to support all these people. Everybody knows inflation and everything else going through the roof. The cost of living, sometimes there's financial and socioeconomic issues like people can't be far from each other, but the number of victims of domestic violence that come in my office immediately.
Within days of being tortured, beaten, hit, smacked, slapped, that come and ask us to dismiss these cases, largely because they don't have the resources to live on their own, is really hard. So if you guys are involved in churches or charities or anything that can help those people, we would love to hear about it. We would love to have resources to help hook these people up with, especially. Beyond that, I don't know what else I have to say other than help us prosecute, help Stacey get the reports, help the sheriff's department and all your police departments, make everybody safer.
Before we take questions, I thought we should hear part of public safety's emergency management from Hector Silva. If you're willing to come up and just tell us kind of what you do and what resources you provide for the county and what people should know about emergency preparedness and emergency management.
Thank you. I can assure you all that my duties with the county, it's indirect. We don't do anything that has to do with law enforcement other than provide support. The sheriff's job and the prosecutor's job, it's a little bit more essential than my job. But what we do is we'll provide support. A lot of people have this misconception that emergency management has only to do with weapons. That's the biggest issue of our department. So we will provide public safety by alerting, preparing our communities when the disaster hits, how to react, and how to protect their families. We have different venues. We have this emergency alert system. I don't know if you're all familiar with HyperReach. I know a lot of people, especially you live in Dixon, they have a lot of complaints, but we have figured out those configurations. And the HyperReach is going to send out alerts to notify the people of Pulaski County, and even people that come from Pulaski County, we have that capability, and let them know when is this next weather event coming in. But HyperReach can do way much more than that. We can provide any emergency notification or any emergency alert that we can to be able to provide that public safety. One way that we can all actually do more directly provide support for our local law enforcement is, so one of the tasks that we do as emergency management, which is that mitigation and that preparedness, is that community risk reduction. We go through the community and we engage with the community to see how we can reduce that risk and make it safer. So one of those ways that we can make it safer is by organizing and coming and gathering with more community organizations that has that duty to provide that public safety. So as an emergency management, we also have this organization called COED, the Community Organization Active in Disaster. So Bill mentioned there are some organizations that are working with crime prevention, drug prevention, CASA. So some of those organizations, if they come under our umbrella, we can provide support that they may not be able to do at the local level. So if the local level is exhausted, that's when we come in and we speak to the federal level, we speak to the higher end of the state to provide that necessary immediate support that our local law enforcement need to be able to provide that public safety. And other than that, I'm just a pretty face, maybe, but maybe thank you.
Thanks. You're not even pretty busy.
No, that, Stacey right here.
Okay, so that's good. A general update. I really hope now that you all have some questions or feedback for us. So if you got something that you want to ask about, what do you think the state should be doing? Do you think the law should be changed? This is a good forum for it. If you see a problem in the sheriff's department or in the criminal justice system, we kind of want to hear from you. So whatever feedback you guys have, whatever questions you have, if you think there's an issue out there in the county that we need to address or not addressing, that's kind of the point of this forum. It's a chance for anybody to kind of, good stuff, criticism stuff, feedback stuff you want to see changed, stuff you see out there in the community, how we can help make people safer, make them have better lives in Pulaski County. That's kind of the whole point of this. So I'll just stop, and if anybody's got any questions or comments, just step up to the microphone. Please introduce yourself, and then just ask us whatever you want to.
Colleen, and I have a few comments and then an example. Okay, so there's this myth about cost savings for the taxpayer in regards to closing prisons. Politicians claim that by closing prisons and releasing offenders early saves money, but this is a short-term savings, and it's deceptive. The financial burden shifts to the taxpayer, the law-abiding citizen, who must fund rearrests, retrials, probation officers, and victim support services for the new victims that these people cause. Every time a released offender reoffends, taxpayers pay for the entire process again. Police work, court processes, incarceration, often costing more than keeping the offender in prison originally. There's no real cost savings if violent criminals are released early and go to commit more crimes that devastate more families and more communities. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, maybe 2 years, 2 years ago, a criminal that was released early because somehow the judiciary system does some IRS common core math that I do not understand. If a criminal gets 7 years, all y'all think he gets 7 years. He doesn't get 7 years. He gets like 5 minutes, right? That's it, right? Touch and go, right? I mean, he gets up there and he comes right back. That's the truth, right? So, manslaughter, he gets out, then he's in my neighborhood. I'm a victim of domestic violence. We used to live somewhere else, and then we moved to a very safe place. I have interlocking cameras for sight, so I can see all around, infrared. I can hear like almost a quarter mile away. Dead end road, 200 feet drop off my back. And no stairs leading up to my deck, all designed so that I can feel safe. Last May, we are out, we come back, my husband put something up, my neighbors sent something, they're on vacation, and they said, hey, have you seen this person? And we're like, no. No, we heard something on the road. Can't tell if they're coming or going. So my husband decides to sit down and check the church is okay. Doesn't see anybody. I go back in the house and get them 3 ducks. Because there's an easement between where the pavement ends and our neighbor's driveways. And that's what the ducks looks like. As I'm coming off the driveway, I hear this sound of this car. I hear yelling, I hear the sound of this car. I thought my husband had gotten hit. This man's coming at me at 30 miles an hour. Like 3 dogs on the road, I'm screaming, stop, stop, stop. And if my dog hadn't moved to get in front of me, I would have died. My dog came this high. He was just by an escort. Have you ever seen how high an escort was off the road? Like this much. I had to watch my dog get killed. It might have been me. I didn't even know my husband was alive or not. But what that did was that triggered my feeling of unsafeness. That man got 120 days. 120 days. He's already told people he's got 4 pages on case that 4 pages. And they're not like traffic stops. These are felonies. 4 pages. And you know what? He's back in jail. Everybody can be surprised to him. He's back in jail. And he's back in jail right now. And he is doing time on the suspended sentence from our case, which was 3 years, for the 3 other crimes that he committed. So he's committed very crimes that he's been out, and he gets the luxury of doing 3 years. One is for 5 years, one's for 4 years, one's for 3 years, and ours is for 3 years. So he gets to do 3 years for all 4 of those. And then I guess he'll just get out of it. These career criminals, they're not videotaping. I don't care what you do. They are not, this man is not videotaping. And that's just one criminal. That's just one. I had to stop. So I used to counsel in my home, and Jim knows this. I used to counsel in my home. So I left all my doors open, and clients that were new would just come in, and I felt fairly safe. I had gotten to a place where my symptoms for PSC that I was fairly okay. I had to stop working because I no longer feel safe. I don't even know my front yard. Hardly ever. Without my husband, I don't feel safe. That's awful for me. That is a terrible place for me to be. And all because we want to save a little bit of money. This person who's ruining my life, he's going to be out, I'm sure, in like, I don't know, 7 minutes. He'll be out next week, I'm sure. It's disgusting. There needs to be a change in the law because people are getting hurt. So that's all I want to say.
We've spoken about this before. It was before my time when this happened to you, and I'm sorry that it did happen to you. I know when I was up at the Prosecuting Attorneys Association conference about a month and a half ago or so, it was right after the governor had gotten sworn in, and he issued 6 executive orders on day 1. One of them was about truth in sentencing, which we discussed, that me personally, not necessarily on behalf of any association, would encourage Bill to support, because that's what we want to know too. And it's frustrating as prosecutors because a lot of the time when we make offers, we have to consider more what we don't have than what we do have. Is it better for me to seek a prison sentence for this guy when I know he might be released in 90 or 120 days, or is it better for me to try and put him on probation where he may be rehabilitatable or have some services or some honest supervision, because the difference in supervision when you're on probation versus the supervision when you're on parole is night and day. These guys on parole are just free. They don't get ordered to do rehab. They don't get ordered to come in very often and take drug tests. They don't have the power of me going to a judge and saying, hey, this guy's screwing up, give me a warrant and stick him in jail for 30 days, which I can do when he's on probation. And like I said, we just have to consider a lot about what we don't have when we make these offers. And I think we closed another prison in Missouri, or consolidated, I think was the term that was used a year or two ago, which is very frustrating for all of us. But I know, I heard Andrew Bailey speak, our Attorney General, and he's pushing for truth in sentencing. I think is that one of the bills we're discussing? I guess.
It's Benny Cook has the bill, yeah. Yeah, so start with truth in sentencing. That's a bill that Benny Cook from Texas County usually files. And truth in sentencing is a bill that says that if you're, say like you committed first-degree assault and you're sentenced to 7 years in prison, that you know that's the actual prison sentence, that they're not parole eligible almost immediately. Because part of the way that parole works is that the Department of Corrections will say, we have so many seats available, we have so many beds, and then if somebody else comes to the Department of Corrections, they feel like they need to triage and then basically release somebody on parole. And so part of that's important, that I think that they know that the priority for staying in prison is people who've been convicted of violent crimes and crimes where there are victims who are actually hurt and harmed. And I think it's also important in the law that we distinguish when somebody's been assaulted, they've been hit by a car, they're a victim of domestic violence, from somebody who wrote a bad check, or they were driving while revoked maybe multiple times. There's just different ways that we should treat that in terms of triage in prison and in terms of expungement and restoration of rights, I think. There's another bill that I helped write the support. A few years back, the Missouri Supreme Court issued a ruling that that finances had to be a consideration in issuance of bond. So bond is when, after the person's arrested, they're held, and the prosecutor can decide to file charges. And if he does, the judge says, if you want to leave, if you want to get out of jail, you need to pay $25,000 or $50,000, or go hire a bondsman to pay a fraction of that. And the court ruling said that the court deciding that had to consider the financial status of the defendant, right? So if somebody had less money, they'd have a lower bond. And so the bill that I wrote said that, overrode that, or helped write, overrode that and said the first consideration is public safety. So if there's somebody who's committed an act of violence against another person, that's the number one consideration the judge has in ascertaining bond. And that's what allows the judge to say, okay, so maybe you wrote a bad check, maybe you shouldn't have a bond, or you should have a $500 bond. You murdered somebody, maybe you should have $1 million bond, right? You should not get out of jail. So, and then the second consideration after that is risk of flight risk, right? How likely are they to appear in court? That's a consideration for bond. That's what bond is. Bond is you're saying, pay money to the court system, and so we know you'll show back up for court and won't take off. But there's also part of that bond conditions that you stay away from the person who you victimized. So I think that's important too. I think that, and now what I'm gonna say is just my personal opinion, it's all controversial, maybe all terrible, this is my thoughts. I think that when you work in the criminal justice system, it's easy to get jaded and think that everybody's a terrible human being, because that's all you see, the worst of everybody. But my experience when I was a prosecutor was that even most people who were charged with crimes were actually kind of pretty good people. They just kind of messed up. There are a lot of people like that who just made a mistake, and it was kind of a bad point of their life. Then there was a category of people that just kind of like operated in the criminal world, right? They weren't like necessarily evil. They were just like crime was just kind of like what they did, and it was just like the business, right? And then there's like a small subset of people who are just truly kind of evil people that I met, and you can almost feel it when they're in the courtroom, like they just had the intent to kill you and to kill everybody. And I think that we should also note that there are people like that out there that just are they kill, attack, assault, and it's our job to get those people out of the community, and they should be in prison. So there's just a difference in the way we treat those things with the resources that we have. But I do support laws that say, hey, if you shot somebody, if you have hit somebody with a baseball bat, if you've done something like that, you should go to prison. You can't, it's unacceptable to commit violence like that to a citizen. And I think that's still distinct from what we're saying, where we're saying, hey, you've dealt with these issues, you've gone through a rough time, there's ways to rehabilitate you. So we also I've supported veterans court and treatment courts to let people go get resources to the VA, stuff like that, to go through therapy, to get where they need to get back on track. And we can still distinguish that from those kind of things that you're talking about. But those are things that we've worked on in the legislature. Truth in sentencing hasn't passed. Usually it's the Department of Corrections that opposes it. some version of it, because they are trying to, just like you said, save money and then kind of collapse space. That's been historically their position. And there's always a tension because in the legislature we always have kind of pro-policing and pro-public safety bills, at least the ones that are categorized that way, and then we have a lot of criminal justice reform bills. And I think there is a lot of reasonable room for criminal justice, like talking about expungement process, but we also have to remember that the point of the system, like the sheriff's his first job is supporting the courts, but the police officer's first job is to keep people from hurting you, right? The reason we have a prosecutor is to seek justice for everybody in our community, where if somebody harms somebody, they commit an act of violence, that there's a penalty that they pay, we say that you can't get away with that, it's not acceptable. So I think that's important too, and I hope that it kind of answered your question what we were doing, but I appreciate you saying that.
I don't think there's a police officer or deputy or anybody in law enforcement that doesn't think the probation system is broke. It's a joke, but as Bill said, there's a portion that, yes, probation will work for, but that small portion that ends up getting the probation that should never be on probation, it deflates us as law enforcement officers. We work hard to make these cases and to give the prosecutor, for the most part, the best thing we can give them is all the information from that case so that he or she can prosecute. It's broke. It's been told the past several years that for us to put someone in prison, they got to release two people out of prison, two nonviolent offenders out of prison to get one person into prison. That's just a stat that's been going around for a while from the former prosecutor. I agree, more jails need to be built. That's the only way that people are going to learn is to spend time in jail, and yes, more than 120 days. That's all deflating to the law enforcement officer as well, to learn that they committed this crime, with not stealing, not your low non-felony crime, but they committed a felony crime and they get 120 days. That's deflating to us. It really is. We don't sit there and jump up for jail, but we've got a conviction, all right, 120 days, cool. No. And yet, there's a lot of, especially for us when it comes to narcotics, we're going to try and get every narcotics case that we can tied to some type of federal prosecution, conspiracy, whatever the case may be, because when you go to the federal system, they're doing 85% of their time, no matter what. They're doing 85%. Plus, the federal courts take into the consideration of their previous criminal history. So, I mean, it's just a broken system. There's not enough probation officers. They have a huge workload too. They do the best that they can, but I think our probation officers here in Pulaski County, they do contact us a lot and let us know of issues and concerns, and people that are coming in they're coming in for a warrant. They'll let us know so we can get down there to snatch them up and get them into jail. So they work very well with us. It's just they have a large number of people that oversee and not our probation officers, share their well.
The sheriff was awesome. I mean, yes, before you got that big problem, I got it in 48 hours after I got back to the video. Prosecutor, the problem was there's no consistency. I thought about 20 days, he was going to get out, and he's not, so he was surely going to commit some robbery, some crime. He committed assault again, not his first time. Right? And so that's why you're up there. It's the truth in sentencing that needs to be fixed. Because I don't care about their feelings. What I care about is all of the tax-paying citizens that are being hurt by these people, that are just criminals. They don't care about who they hurt to get what they want. And then that impacts my ability to work, to pay taxes, to pay into the system, for your guys' jobs. I mean, it's a compounding thing, and I'm just one person. There are other people. It's not just one story, there's a bunch of them, I'm sure.
Thank you. Anybody else got any comments or questions? Yeah, please come on up. Just tell us who you are. Just tell us your name, Cheryl.
My name is Cheryl King, and it's mainly I own a gift shop downtown, and then my daughter owns an ice cream store downtown. The question I have is kind of the procedures when you have a lot of like your low-level offenders in the jail, and then they get out, and a lot of them, especially when they're out-of-towners, they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do, so they a lot of them show up asking us, can you use a phone? Do you have $5? Do you have, and so sometimes it's no problem, here's the phone. But sometimes it gets a little nerve-wracking. So my question is, what is the procedure when you have somebody from out of town? Do they just say, oh, you're released by? Or are they given any information on how to get back home? Sometimes there's their insurance and t-shirts, or when they're released, it's 20 degrees, they have warm, is there when they get out of jail, or when is there something we can give them, say, hey, call this person, or this church, or do you know anything about any program about?
My only answer is out of time and stuff like that. I haven't had an answer to that. I'm sorry. The locals that are in jail, they'll be able to call from jail, they'll call from dispatch, call for a ride. The outside, to be honest with you, never crossed my mind that getting, bonding out of jail. Bonding out of jail, they have somebody on them out. Somebody's co-signed for that bond. So I mean, they have people here getting OR or something like that for. I mean.
Well, just for example, like last week, a young lady came in, and was walking, and she is just like, you could tell she was nervous, she was scared. I said, can I help you with something? And she's like, oh, I was in the St. Louis County Jail, and she's like, I had that traffic ticket. I didn't even know where Pulaski County was, and that's why I warned, because I didn't show up before. So when there's small little things like that, is there something that they could do over Zoom? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it depends when we get them. A lot of the time, yeah. Respond to your traffic tickets, guys. If you get a ticket, do something about it. You'd be shocked by the cases I have coming out of the woodworks from, we had a guy in jail that hadn't been seen here and was charged with a crime in 2015 and had a warrant pending for his arrest for 10 years. And he landed in our jail just a couple weeks ago. I've had traffic tickets from years and years ago, and these people get, yeah, and she knew about it and didn't respond to it. It's the problem. No, I know they forget, but I mean, it's.
Is it if there's something or if you can find or help, just let us know some resources, because
If they-
You're right. That's something that I can definitely look into with my jail administrators to see what I haven't paid attention to out of towners with those kind of resources. Now we are getting a reintegration specialist into our jail. That reintegration specialist is also, they will coordinate counseling and they'll coordinate work, things like that, where before they get out, when they hit that 90-day mark, before they're released. But the out-of-towners, I mean, I would definitely have to, luckily I got one of my jail administrators here that can
Well, and that
help
was
me out with
with.
that tomorrow.
It's not an everyday occurrence, but
Yeah, no, you're, I mean, I should be smarter on that process, I'll admit it, but.
And that grant we got through MOCA, is it through, not
Yeah.
MOCA, or COMA?
COMC.
COMC, they are, I'll look at that, maybe we can ask them if they have some transportation resources, because I know they do have transportation resources for needy people to get to some of their services up in Richland at their medical offices, so that is probably something we can ask them about, so that's a good idea.
McDonald's, so that she can get Wi-Fi, and then, or I think people sitting in my store waiting for their ride, and
Sure.
because that's,
It's scary, but you don't want them just.
Well, and a lot of these people, when they get arrested on old traffic tickets, we send plea paperwork down to the jail, they agree to pay a fine, and they get out right away, but they're not calling us when they get arrested in St. Louis. They're just going and getting them and bringing them here, so we don't hear about it. Would I love to do that by Zoom? Yeah. Can they plea and pay their traffic tickets online when they get them most of the time? Yeah. So it's...
It's just a question we have and just
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, yeah. Anybody else?
Amendment 3.
Okay.
When it was passed, where do we stand with release of funds to like our local offices that are getting the help that they need to deal with this crisis?
Which Amendment 3? The abortion or the marijuana one?
Marijuana. Maybe.
Okay, marijuana. Okay.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
agree, it's tied up in litigation
So the-
and the funds were frozen.
Yeah.
Where are we with that? Because it's a lot of great ideas without funding.
So the 2022 Amendment 3 took the money from the marijuana licenses around the state and was supposed to go to the Veterans Commission, but after litigation. So right now, supposedly a lot of that money is tied up in the expungement, the automatic expungement of marijuana records, and then in litigation for the licenses and stuff like that. So the Department of Health and Senior Services is using a lot of that money for that purpose. I always ask them, because we have about a $10 million shortage in the veterans' homes in Missouri right now. And the commissioner of the Missouri Veterans Commission is considering a course of action that will close veterans' homes in Missouri. So I'm constantly asking them where that money that was supposed to go to the Missouri Veterans Commission is, and they haven't seen much of it yet. So, but I've been trying to put pressure on saying, okay, please finish the expungement process and then send that over to the Veterans Commission. But if you remember in 2023, there were 3 marijuana ballot measures on the ballot. And the one that passed was the one that said the proceeds are supposed to, there's a law enforcement portion of it, and then the bulk of it goes to the Veterans Commission. That money hasn't materialized yet to the Veterans Commission in a meaningful way, and they're really short.
The voters have spoken, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They've spoken, and now it's tied up in litigation.
That's right.
And they're not bidding, we voted, and it feels like they're slow rolling this process, because these are desperately needed funds for some of these
Yep.
agencies dealing with these.
Yeah, that's right. No,
Are you talking about the local tax revenue on the marijuana too, or just the?
All of it.
Yeah,
All of it.
No,
Right?
that-
To pay for the flood cameras, right?
yeah. You're right, that's what that money is supposed to go to, that's what the voters intended to. And that it's also correct, it's very frustrating that it hasn't ended up where a lot of the voters wanted it to go because of the records expungement process and then litigation of people who sued saying they didn't receive a license. And then those money's going to whatever, to address those lawsuits or whatever, and administrative costs. But it is an ongoing conversation I have with DHSS a lot. It's a conversation I have with Veterans Commission a lot. But that money's supposed to go and flow to those places. And it's true, just, and we got a new governor, and maybe we'll continue to press on him that money's being tied up in places. It's not going to local law enforcement. It's not going to the Veterans Commission right now. At least not in a meaningful way that we need it to. Did you end?
Well, I'd just say I know there's the local tax revenue issue with the stacking where the city of St. Robert, where our dispensary in this county is located, is collecting a tax, and then the county passed a tax as well, and there is a case sitting at the door of the Supreme Court right now in Missouri to determine whether or not that's allowed to stack. So the county, I've instructed them don't spend the money until that case is decided and they give us some guidance because of my interpretation of the way the amendment was written on how the tax money is supposed to go first to the city and then to the county. So that one's just kind of stuck, and I don't want the county to get stuck having to pay it back if they go ahead and spend it all, quite frankly.
All the while, they continue to collect those, right? And they're
They've stopped.
taking the share for them at this level. Right? It's somewhere.
Yeah, that's some problem. That's some problem by appropriating through the Constitution too, because we don't actually have like a House bill that says this money's being spent for it. It has like an automatic process and it follows that process. So it gives the executive department way too much discretion in saying, well, the Constitution allows us to spend this money on these things. Because if you think about it, it's not going to generate revenue where we're appropriating. But that's been, especially this last month, has been a very touchy subject. Because the director of the Veterans Commission came in my office and sat down and said, we're about to close down veterans' homes in Missouri. And they're seriously in the red, it's a serious crisis. And I've been working actually a lot this session on figuring out how to get that $10 million or find sources right to fund them. That's a big part of what I've been busy on doing, right, is figuring out how to do that. But it's very frustrating because we had that exact conversation where like, well, Amendment 3 went into effect. The reason why a lot of people voted for it is because it said it goes to, has the local effort, and then it's gonna go to the veterans in the state. And it's just not flowing there, right? So, I'll redouble my efforts on that, but that is a huge problem for sure. But it's like there's some things like that, like conservations like that, MODATs like that, where the Constitution gives it a direct kind of appropriation for the way the money's collected to the receiving of the appropriation, and then we don't actually have a House bill that affects it because it's in the Constitution the way that money's supposed to flow. So, anybody else?
For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. 1 Samuel 1:27. Behold, children are a heritage and a gift from the Lord. Psalm 127:3. The Missouri Children's Divisions have violated people's civil rights. The rights violated is the First Amendment, 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and especially the 14th Amendment. Children need both parents. Kids who have both parents in their lives have higher academics, less likely to do drugs and go to prison. They have more stability. No parent should have to fight custody. Washington versus Luxembourg states that the Constitution, and specifically the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, protects the fundamental rights of parents to direct the care, upbringing, and education of their children. I'm advocating for some victims. Victim 1, parental alienation. He has not seen his 4 children in almost 3 years. That's 165 days, 12 birthday parties, 3 Christmases, 3 New Year's, 3 Easters, 3 Valentine's Day, 3 father-daughter dances, his kids losing teeth and growing new ones, his son going through puberty, which is a time when a father is truly needed for guidance. He has never been arrested, he's never been prosecuted or charged with anything. He has not been able to have supervised visitations, phone calls, or video chats, though he continues to do everything the state asks and 0 physical evidence. What does victim 1 do? He changed his 3-year-old dirty diaper in front of his 3 older children. If he did not change baby's diaper, it would be considered neglect. And you are 3 men up here. Can you imagine taking care of your child and changing your child's diaper, and you go into a custody battle, and the mother accuses you of something so heinous? And it was all because he introduced his kid to his new girlfriend. Victim 2, a foster parent, will not take cases from Phelps or Pulaski County because of the corruption. They have reached out to the governor's office with no avail. They had 2 foster kids for 2 years. They were taken from their mother for testing positive for drugs and neglect. She eventually was sober for 30 days, and they gave them back. She had another child, and less than a year later, the foster parents got all of her kids back. She states, I do not understand how young children can test positive for meth and STDs, and the parents are not charged for it. No, the parents are walking around still doing drugs with the possibility of getting their kids back. Victim 3, both honorable disabled veterans who've never been arrested or charged with any crime. A family of 10 had just gotten home that evening from the hospital after giving birth 24 hours prior. The 10-year-old smacked the 5-year-old in the face. The father grabbed the bottom of the 10-year-old's very pale chin, and it left a red mark. He was not being beaten, and his life was not in danger. Both parents were sleep deprived The mother was vulnerable, physically and mentally exhausted. She was alone, interrogated, harassed, bullied, and they made the husband leave the home for the first 2 weeks of his new baby's life. The mother found out they were both in the child registry, applying to be a volunteer at her kid's school. They denied her to be a volunteer for that school year. It was embarrassing and humiliating. She could not appeal it because it had already passed the 60 days when she was unaware that she was on the registry. And 60 days is not enough time. The mother struggles to find a decent job, even with a bachelor's degree, due to this being on her background check. They have never been arrested or charged with anything, but are treated like criminals. Even sex offenders have more rights. So someone who hasn't ever been arrested for a crime, has never been in front of a judge and a jury, is automatically put on a registry like a criminal. But a sex offender convicted by a judge and a jury of 12 of heinous crimes gets to register themselves and has the opportunity to eventually be removed after so many years, unlike the child registry. How many parents have lost months or years with their children over ignorance and corruption? A mother loses her kids due to rare medical issues. Mothers have Munchausen by proxy, and no one reports her because she homeschools her kids. This corruption must stop. This system is so overloaded with 90% fictitious calls. The system sweeps things under the rug. In 2023, Gulf and Pulaski County has someone in the inside of Children's Division leaking confidential information to the public about an ongoing case. There was plenty of evidence, and there was an internal investigation, but we were not allowed to find out who the mole was that was harassing them, stalking them, and was leaking the private and confidential information. We did not find out if the person was caught or what consequences there were. If this was a mole in any other state department, like the police, for instance, we would have the right to know. How many parents live in fear because how easily Children's Division takes away kids? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think you kind of described what I think is a problem, and I'm just talking about this today. So on one end of the problem, there are parents who are trying to do the best they can, and maybe they are, they have a lot of money or whatever, and the state kind of takes their kids away, and they go through a nightmare to try to get their kids back, right? And it's like a guilty until proven innocent thing that might go on for years. There's another problem where there are children who are trapped in abusive situations. Maybe they're addicted to methamphetamine as babies, as small children. They're being sexually abused, they're being physically abused, and the state's not doing anything about it. So both things happen simultaneously. There are a couple of things that I've talked to our judges about, and I'll talk to you more about this when we're done too. If you'll stick around, we'll talk about it. We've talked about reforms that need to be taking place. The baby that was in St. Robert, who was neglected and died, was a Jefferson County juvenile case. So that baby was taken away from her mom in Jefferson County, and then she was placed with a friend of a friend, right, in St. Robert. And the Children's Division and the juvenile office here had no idea that baby was in St. Robert, right? Had no idea. And then that baby was neglected and died in St. Robert, right? And so that tells me that if something like that can happen, there's immediately that we know that there's some reforms that we have to have take place. There's another situation, which I don't think she'd mind me telling you, of Rebecca's situation, where they had a small child, and the baby, I say baby, it was a very small child, bones broke super easily, like a genetic anomaly. And so they went to a different pediatrician. The pediatrician said, there's no way this could have taken place except for abuse. And their kids were taken away from all of them, right? And they were never charged, they were never convicted, there was no criminal case. But they fought for this huge amount of time to get all their children back. And while their children were in foster care, the baby's bones continued to break in foster care. And the baby wasn't getting the specialty treatment that baby needed, right? Until finally they got a specialist to say, there's just a normal genetic condition, medical condition. And so that something like that can happen tells me a problem too. And that family was placed on the central registry, which is a database that it's unrelated to the court process, that you have collateral consequences of being a child abuser for the rest of your life, right? Even if there's no court case. And one of the first things I did when I got elected as state rep is found a kind of weird statute and used it to get them off the central registry, right? And I think that if you're not convicted of anything, there's not due process, you shouldn't have these collateral consequences of conviction. But this is a conversation that we have a lot, that there are children who are in really dangerous situations, right? They're in meth labs. They're being horrifically abused, just like we had in Pulaski County a couple years ago. That I think it's a 5-year-old child, right, who was killed in Pulaski County. And where was the oversight necessary with the state doing their job, right? And then you have other situations like where parents, they ran to the post office, something like that, or their kids were playing at the park and they're taken away from their parents. And the parents maybe can't afford to pay $50,000 in legal fees, they can't afford to fight it, they can't whatever, right? So that's a serious problem. So the reform of the foster care system and the juvenile system is something that we are working on and have a serious conversation about. And I don't want to necessarily, this is kind of my job, to talk about changing the law too a little bit. I always want to make sure that we do that when we're talking to our local prosecutor and sheriff, talking to the judges, talking to our council members and saying kind of what do you see? Because if I enact a law that addresses a specific horror story, I might create more horror stories accidentally, right? So I'm striving to find a reform that captures all these different horror stories on a wide range of the spectrum, which is there are kids, like you said, who are in really, really horrible, horrific, unimaginable situations, and we're not doing anything about it, right? And there's nobody who's looking after them. And then there are parents who really are just trying to do the best they can and see their kids, and they run into an impossible legal albatross to try to get their kids back, right? And that seems like a problem. And we could tell you example after example of that. So the best way to answer your question is say, if you want to visit about things that we're working on and ways that we're working on reforms right now that'll address it legally, we could talk about that. The central, like the databases of parents is a big problem, I think. Doing that where there's sometimes these guys don't even know it about the situation. They've never seen it. And the parents go into a database and then they're like, and sometimes the parents don't even know they're on it until they go try to apply to work in the school district or coach soccer, and they're flagged as being the central registry. And that's a problem too. There's a due process problem there. So there's a lot we need to talk about to addressing it. To me, I think that, in my opinion, as a lawmaker, a big part of the answer of it is accountability, right? That there's somebody who's responsible. And when you have 5 or 6 different layers of bureaucracy or government agencies, it's easy to say, well, that wasn't our job, or we followed our signs of safety, right? And then you pass the buck off to another agency, well, that was their job. But the decision-making process, the decision-making tree has to end with somebody who's accountable to the voters and accountable to the people, I think, right? Whether that's the juvenile judge or somebody, but there's got to be accountability to review those decisions. There's got to be communication about what's being done. So when the bureaucracy, the agency is doing things secretively, right? They're making findings secretively, and it's affecting people's lives, whether somebody's in abuse and the charges aren't being brought up to have somebody be charged, or there's something that's going on outside the judicial system that's wrecking people's lives. That needs to be communicated as well too, I think. But I don't know if my colleagues want to have input on that, but I definitely want you to stick around and we can have a conversation about exactly there are several foster care bills that are really working through the system rapidly this year. There are bills on medical kidnapping that we can talk about. There are bills on how you make sure people are safe in foster care. And I'll add something too, because this is something that I think about on a general basis in my job. Because, and as a prosecutor and as an attorney in private practice, I've seen both instances where there's a kid in a really bad situation, gets into foster care, and this is an epidemic too, where there are some parents who they don't have any desire to get their kids back, and they just leave. And so the only love and safety that kid's ever known is loving foster parents. And that's the best chance for that kid's success, to be in foster care. And I've also seen it where kids get placed in foster care and they get to an abusive situation in foster care that's worse than when they were, right? And so how do we sort of, the statistical term is normalize that? Like, we're this over here and kind of standardize that. That's what we really need to work on. But it is a big problem in our state, because I've seen exactly both things. I've seen parents who have just disappeared and they've abandoned their child. And then we've got to figure out how to make sure that child's safe. And I've seen parents who are just fighting as much as they can, and every parent in that situation I've ever dealt with is hyper stressed out, which I would be too if I wouldn't see my kids. hyper stressed, and they want to see their kids back, right? And they're frustrated by a system that doesn't make any sense to them. And their kids might be in a bad situation because it's traumatizing in itself. The whole thing's traumatic for everybody. So I don't think the state's doing a very good job across the board of that. And this is frankly my last 2 years in the House of Representatives, and I'm really dedicated to be a part of reforming that, right? And so that we unify families where families want to be unified, and we don't take away kids when we shouldn't be taking away kids. Maybe we provide resources and help and stuff like that. We're not taking away kids, and then we keep kids from just being in this trap. There are some kids who are trapped where you send them right back to the spot, and their parents are addicted to drugs. Their parents are not there, or their parents are sexually abusive, and you send them right back to it. And it's a cycle from foster care back to the parents, right, the biological parents, and that's bad too. So we really have to make some changes, and I'm a part of that. I want to be part of that change, and I hope we converse more whenever we're done too.
For me as the prosecutor, it starts with our children are our most vulnerable victims, and they're also our worst witnesses, which makes those cases of child abuse so hard to prosecute and so hard to determine the truth a lot of the time. Children have limited vocabulary. They don't use words the same way adults do. They are just tough. I recently had a case where I had a child victim, and he had to come to court and testify. So to try and make this 3-year-old boy feel comfortable, I brought him into the courtroom a couple days beforehand. I showed him where he was going to sit and explained who the judge would be, just kind of walk through the courtroom procedure, because hopefully you guys don't have to go there, but it's not a fun place even for lawyers to be. It's really not fun for 3-year-olds. So I talked through his story and I listened to what he had to say. 2 days later, he comes to court and just gets scared and clams up and doesn't say a word. And I can't speak to any of the specific incidences you spoke about. I can tell you I've been involved in the juvenile court system for the last 15 years of my career on every side of it. I've represented the parents, I've represented the children, I've represented myself as a foster parent, and I agree it's broken. I agree there are a lot of things that need to change. A lot of that does start with Children's Division. I had a call on Friday after hours about children who are in a bad situation, and I asked Children's Division to take the kids. I said, take them, we sort this out, because we don't have all the information on day one. But sometimes that sparks a spiral of rolling into this system that, like Bill said, is just a hard place to get out of. And just my personal opinion from working in the system for so long is that Children's Division's rules and regulations for how they treat each case seems to be way too similar for the children that are being abused, physically abused, versus the children that are being exposed to drugs, versus the children that are just being severely neglected by parents who can't keep a clean house or living in very unsanitary conditions. And it seems to me that one of the things I would suggest to the legislature maybe is having some different paths, because some things take a few months to fix, but the juvenile court system seems to always take a set amount of time, which if a parent's perfect and does everything they're supposed to do, it's that 9 to 12 month range before they're even considering getting their children back. And I think there's a lot of cases that are a lot shorter span than that if we can get in and get them the resources they need. But I know that doesn't help any of your victims, but that's just my personal thoughts on it.
I'm sitting here thinking, if my father was alive, he would probably have spent life in prison for, didn't ever consider it abuse, but for the discipline that he showed me. That you just can't do that these days. The law enforcement officers, I'm going to tell you now, dealing with children, period, is not an easy thing for any law enforcement officer. We in Pulaski County have dealt with a lot of children deaths. Our detectives and deputies have seen a lot of that the last couple of years. Yes, our deputies and detectives, we have discretion, but law enforcement is always going to err on the side of the child to protect the child, what's best for the child. There are some things that are clear and cut. mandated, I mean, we're law enforcement. If we go into a situation where we see clear-cut signs of abuse, I mean, we've been in some, think about some of the places around here. Most of the deputies and officers have been in some of the nastiest places around, with kids in it, with dog feces all over the place, no running water. Those are obvious. When it comes down to some of the things you described, we do have things like Kids Harbor that helps identify and find some truth, I guess, with our kids that are going through this process, and they do a great job over there. We're not always going to get it right, but we're going to err on the side of caution and then let the courts decide, because there's been too many times where an officer or deputy or detective have walked out of that situation and a couple of days later, a week later, that baby's dead. Or the baby's in a hospital with wounds, or it's happened to a lot of us. So we're going to err on the side of the caution for the child, and I mean, with what you're describing, I mean, that's law issues right there, to change some of the things you're looking at from the state level. But just the law enforcement aspect, it's not easy on us. We don't like going in there taking kids away from families. But again, that's the position we're put in, being law enforcement officers, and it's up to our discretion and up to the law to give us or to tell us what we need to do in that situation.
Thanks. And I'll add, if you ever read the juvenile jurisdiction statute, it's very broad. I mean, there's a whole list of things, and they have a lot of discretion in what's happening in juvenile court. If the prosecutors decide to certify like a teenager as an adult, what's happening is the state is taking custody of the child in loco parentis. So the state comes in and becomes the parent of children in the juvenile system, and the state says we have jurisdiction. Now we're the mom and dad have no more say. It's entirely up to the state of Missouri what happens with that child. So that's a really big thing if you think about it, to do that. It's a huge deal. And so we just need to look at making sure that that when it's happened, it's something that's necessary. There's a way to do it when it's absolutely necessary, but it's hard for the state to do it. There's some checks and balances. And then we just need to figure out a way to describe both the situations I talked about, where kids are in a loop of abuse. We need to address that, and then make sure that parents, sometimes parents haven't committed any crime, they haven't done anything, there's no charges or nothing. How do they get their kids back? Or how do they not have their kids taken in the first place? We have to talk about that. So, thank you, though, for your question. Anybody else?
My name is Greg Lee. I'm from Dixon, Missouri. I'm going to address the people, if that's okay. As far as child abuse goes in Pulaski County, there's another unknown crime in this county that people aren't taking notice of, and it's guardianship abuse of our elderly. My mom has been under guardianship in Pulaski County for the last 5 years. She's been under 2 guardians, Loretta Rouse and Rebecca Allen. Now, we are currently in the Court of Appeals right now on the 14th Amendment for due process. The public administrators, both of them, are named in this case. You won't hear that publicly from the media, but it's happening. And it's happening more than you know. My mom is not the only victim of this guardianship racket that's going on in Pulaski County, but I'm going to give you a little bit of her highlight of what's happened to my mom, and I'm going to tell you about a few other victims in Pulaski County. This has been going on. Now, my mom was placed under guardianship on October 21st of 2019. She was placed under emergency guardianship here in Pulaski County. Now, this order was signed by a judge and 2 attorneys. And it says, cause called, parties are in agreement for the court to appoint appoint public administrator of Pulaski County, Loretta Rouse, on an emergency basis as temporary guardian and conservator for Shirley Love. Now, my mom did not have a day in court. This was done in a chamber, not the judge's chamber, a side office. And I was told that if I signed that piece of paper, I would get to see my mom. Now, back up a little bit. My sister took my mom from her home back in April, and it took me 2 months to find her in a nursing home down in Hardwick, Missouri. I was the one that approached Pulaski County to protect my mom on the guardianship. I was the petitioner. They like to use that against me, but I didn't know what guardianship was 5 years ago. I know what it is now. And I've been researching hundreds of cases in this county over the last 20 years. What's going on with the guardianship abuse? There's embezzlement going on, in my opinion. There's abuse going on. I can prove it. I'm going to read you, most recently, a couple short emails from our current public administrator and what has happened to my mom. Now, we hear about child abuse, but we don't hear about our seniors being abused. There's a lot of baby boomers aging out right now, getting older. People want to stuff them in a nursing home. Now, if you stick with the guardianship problem, this isn't a Pulaski County problem. This isn't a Missouri problem. This is a nationwide problem. Go ahead and jump online, Facebook, whatever platform you use, and do a Google search on guardianship abuse. You'll even find several public administrators right here in Missouri that have been arrested for this embezzlement and misappropriated funds. Now, how do they do the guardianship in, well, all over the country? Adjudicate, isolate, medicate, seal the estate, and cremate. Get rid of it. Now, children are a different story. They don't have money, they can't speak for themselves. A lot of times, our seniors can't speak for themselves. But they're not getting a fair rap in Pulaski County courts. They're not getting a fair rap in many Missouri courts. This is happening in Phelps County too. This is happening in St. Clair County too. In St. Clair County, which is the county that my mom was in the nursing home, the administrator of that nursing home is petitioning the courts to put his own people under guardianship, his own residents under guardianship. Now, this is a public administrator in another county. Now, the only person who testified in that lady's guardianship case was the nursing home administrator. And she was placed under guardianship. Now, her case wasn't even on the docket for that day. Matter of fact, when I requested the court audio, I got 2 cases that day because the other lady was on the case and this lady was just a side. She was not in court. My mom was not in court. All it takes is a signature. And trust me, there are local judges that will rubber stamp things. Our probate system is in a shambles. There are guardianship victims right here in Pulaski County besides my mom that can't even have visitors unless they have a public administrator permission. Same with my mom. Now, the public administrator, she will not let me see my mom unless I'm in a supervisor. Now, there's no court order out there. There's no trespass or any nursing home. Nothing. I'm going to read you these emails to give you an idea of what is happening to my mom and many other people right here in Pulaski County. Well, before I read these, I want to tell you about another lady that just got out of guardianship here in Pulaski County. I won't mention her name, but she was placed under guardianship a couple years ago right here in Pulaski County with a rubber stamp. She was not in court. It was just a few months after her husband passed away. She was placed in a psych facility, just like my mom was on 3 different occasions. My mom's never had any psychiatric problems. None. Right now, my mom is on multiple antipsychotics. Now, if the guardian, your public administrator, has this much power over you, if you were to fall tomorrow, end up in the hospital, and your family didn't know about it, and then you go to sit to a nursing home for recovery, You could be under guardianship in a couple of days and not even know it. There's no hearings being held. It's not happening. Now, you ask, what are they doing this for? Well, there's one case, the lady's passed on now. There's over $600,000 from our estate unaccounted for. The cases I've researched, the victims that I've spoken to, millions. Now, before Mr. Ball came in, I requested our former sheriff to look into this. I came to them with evidence. You know who they talked to? The public administrator. They got robbed. Nothing happened. My mom was still in the same nursing home. Now, this nursing home that my mom's in right now, where they're also keeping the rolls up, the nursing home that she is in, we just got that off the train of thought. When I moved out there in December of 2021, I saw my mom on December 23rd, or excuse me, December 25th, 2021. 4 days later, my mom was in ICU in a hospital up there. Now, mind you, she had just been taken from her second psychiatric facility visit, which she allegedly hit someone in the nursing home. They left her there in excess of 45 days. And by the way, this psych facility in the Springfield, that's the one that's currently about the abuse of children, the sexual abuse of children. What happened to my mom while she was in that psychiatric facility? What about the other lady, this gentleman? His name is Tim Corbin from Truman Lake Manor in Lowry City, Missouri. He filed a petition for guardianship for this woman. Guess where she came from? Look at that site. So, are these nursing homes also clearinghouses to dispose of our elderly? My mom in the last year, well, let me read you the emails first. This was sent to me on February 26th of this year. Received a call. Now, this is from Rebecca Allen, the public administrator that was elected in this county in November of 2024. In full disclosure, I ran for public administrator against Loretta Rouse in 2020, and I ran against Rebecca Allen in 2024 because there is a problem with our system. And I will expose it. I'm not afraid to stand up here and tell you guys, if I was to get in office, I'm going to expose the problem. But I need your help. I need your help.
Thanks, Greg. I just want you to finish up your comments, though, but go ahead, please. Yeah, please just, yeah, thank you.
All right. On February 6th, I received from Rebecca Allen, received a call from Truman Lake NH that Miss Butler got her feet tangled up in a chair when wandering and fell. She has a laceration above her eyebrow, and they sent her out to be checked. She returned to the NH and is fine, just some bruising in a small place above her eye. Okay, she notified me days later. On February 6th, I replied to her, Miss Allen, I have received your delayed notification regarding the fall that my mom, Shirley Butler, had early yesterday. Due to this recent event, I will reiterate my concern for her health and well-being while residing in Truman Lake Manor. Unfortunately, despite raising these concerns to you on several previous occasions, Mom has now received further injuries while under your custody and control. I will be visiting Mom Sunday, February 9th, 2025 at Truman Lake Manor. It is in the best interest of Shirley that I'm able to visit her. Please send me your confirmation of your correspondence with Truman Lake Manor that you have instructed them to comply with the visitation. She sent me, less than half an hour later, one sentence. Sunday the 9th is not proof. So then, I send her on February 13th. Miss Allen, I will be visiting Shirley Butler at Truman Lake Manor on February 18th, 2025, and February 20th, 2025. Per the May 21, 2021, and September 9, 2021 orders. Now, mind you, these orders are under appeal right now for the constitutional constitutionality of them themselves while my mom was being held hostage in this nursing home. Now, she replied to me the very next day. She goes, "This is too short of a notice, and I have prior commitments, not approved." Now, I asked her, or I told her, notified her February 18th and 20th. On February 18th, I'm getting ready to head out the door. An email at 7:42 a.m. before business hours. Shirley, as a result of her dementia, got tangled up in some chairs and had a fall this weekend, the 15th and the 16th, and went to the hospital. As of late yesterday evening, she is back at the nursing home with comfort care. She is doing well. Now, I notified the public administrator that I would visit my mom day after tomorrow. And I expected her to notify the nursing home that I would be there. Now, I've been publicly exposing this nursing home. They do not want me in their nursing home because I'm exposing the abuse. But yet, we had a judge in this county that put in an order that said I could not take any documentation. Why? We are a public nursing home with Medicare and Medicaid funded. Now, you could put a camera in your mother's room, but God forbid if you walk in there and try to document the abuse of your own mother. I have pictures of her toenails growing in her feet. She can't even put her own shoes on. I say something, the next time I would see her, look how else was that. But I had to keep on and keep on. Now, how can an elected official have this much power over any one of you? I'm here to ask. Well, basically, I'm put in the position that my mom is allegedly on comfort care right now. And I have responded to this public administrator to ask her what her definition of comfort care is. She is required to give me medical information on my mother and refuses to. Says it's a HIPAA violation. They're covering up the abuse. Now, if my mom passes away in this nursing home, this public administrator is acting under the color of law. This is deliberate in my opinion. I've ran against them twice. I've exposed them. This is not just the abuse of my mom. This is retaliation against myself for trying to expose what's happening in this county. Now, I'm put in a position where if my mom dies under the care of Pulaski County, do I file a wrongful death lawsuit because the county failed to act in the best interest of my mom?
Greg, if you don't mind, do you want to pose a question, or is that?
I want to ask you guys, what can I do to get help from you?
Okay.
I'm not going to bring out certain individual aspects of this case in public, but I do want to leave this for us to discuss. I'm not going to expose who was involved, who signed paperwork, other requests and stuff at this point. I do want to ask you guys to help. I'm not coming to you with venom. I'm coming to you to protect my mom. That's all I have. I just want to ask for your help. If we could get a meeting at some point, let's see what we can do. I'll let you guys.
Greg, we met last fall. I owe you a follow-up meeting. And there's some things we talked about, like making sure there's some archaic laws about, just for one, about incentivization for guardianships. Like the sheriff should be paid for arrest, right? Maybe that money should be based for guardianship.
Guardianships are incentivized in Pulaski County because the more wards they have, the more money they make.
Well, that's and I guess my point is that's statutory, so it's not that's not necessarily the public administrator's fault. That's a law we need to change, right? That's statutory. I think you need to see your mom, and then let's stick around after here. We'll talk about that more. But I think we need to talk more about that. So.
Not just seeing my mom. My mom should be home. It even states in her documents, the public administrator signed and do not necessitate order on my mom when she put her in the nursing home. A public official should not be able to go against their wishes. Yes.
Hang out, Greg, and we'll talk to you. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so So let's go ahead and kind of close it down a little bit. I'll give you a couple admin notes. Before you go, there's families that have been affected by fentanyl poisoning. Please take time to walk around and look at the names and talk to the ladies who are here and listen to their story and sort of make sure we raise awareness for that public health crisis. Over there, if you don't eat the donuts, then I'll eat all of them. That's not a big deal. I'll take care of that. And then there's some of you, we need to address some stuff and talk about kind of issues that we owe you that. So what I'll do is I'm going to hang out, and anybody who wants to talk to me and say, hey, I didn't want to talk about it on the microphone or whatever, we'll see what we can do to kind of fix the problems that we need to be fixing in the county and the state too. So I'm going to thank you guys for coming here. And then what I'm going to do is I think the best way to end the event formally is to ask Pastor Howard to come back up and pray over all of us and pray us out, conclude the meeting.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for your love for us. And Lord, we're just, we're so thankful for these men and others who are elected officials, appointed officials, who influence our life and our health and our safety in so many ways. And again, Lord, as we started this meeting tonight, I just ask you to bless these people. Give them wisdom, Lord. Help them to do what's right. And it's hard sometimes, but we know that. But we just trust you to work through them, to get these things done that need to be done, the changes made that need to be made. And where we need to be involved, we need to know that as well. And so, again, thank you for your protection over all of our law enforcement. All of them that are out there on the street, in harm's way, on our behalf, working day and night, 24/7, 365 to keep us safe in this county. And we just thank you for them and for your love. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sir, it's good to finally meet you.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
Do that MP handshake.
So now, what's the choice? When were you at the force?
Yeah, we're out here logging off here tonight. Glad for everybody that's joined us today and tonight, and thank you for turning up, and turning loose. Had a lot of good discussions, a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll see you at the next show. Thursday we'll go on live at the commissioners meeting and broadcast from the commissioner's office. Hopefully our microphones work a little bit better.